Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Hardman, the Interim Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, and I'm here on behalf of President David Pershing and the university leadership and faculty to give you a very warm welcome to this celebration of the Honorable Mickey Ibarra and the contributions of the papers, the Mickey Ibarra papers, A Utah Journey to the White House. The Ibarra papers chronicle his years as a special assistant to President Clinton and the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, and as his role has unfolded over the years in terms of his major contributions to the Latino community, to the state of Utah, and the nation. These papers provide us a very rare and unprecedented access to personal photos and documents that really talk about his role within the administration as liaison to the nation's mayors and governors, the White House Task Force on Drug Use in Sports, and his role as vice chair of the White House Task Force on our Salt Lake Winter Games, including being named as honorary mayor of the Winter Games. Now, Mickey Ibarra's decision that the University of Utah be selected as a repository for these historical documents is particularly meaningful given the fact that his first degree came from our colleagues to the south, BYU. But his master's degree and his honorary doctorate of humane letters comes from the University of Utah. And in fact, Mickey and I really have something in common, and that is, in addition to our respect and admiration for President Clinton and for Secretary of State Clinton, and that is we both began our careers in public education. And Ricky, for many years, was a teacher and a leader in the field of special education. And his master's degree here at the University of Utah, an MED, is in special education, which is my college, and we're very proud of that. He started as an alternative high school. He started an alternative high school for troubled youth in Utah County with an emphasis on teaching students with emotional disturbance. And then he went on. He went on to receive, as I said, his master's degree, and then drew upon his teaching experience to become a major player with the Utah Education Association, then on to the National Education Association. And then the founder and chairman of the very important Latino Leadership Network. So once again, I want to say on behalf of President Pershing, the University of Utah expresses our very sincere gratitude to Mickey Ibarra for this important contribution to the Marriott Library and to the people of the state of Utah and to the nation. We are very proud indeed to have a role in your legacy as one of the President's most trusted advisors, a national leader in the Latino community, and a lifelong public servant on behalf of this country. We thank you, Mickey, and we're very proud you're here. And now, I'd like to turn it over to our interim dean of the Marriott Library, Rick Anderson.
Well, on behalf of all of us here at the J. Willard Marriott Library, I want to welcome all of you to our beautiful and recently renovated facility, which I hope if you have not yet had a chance to explore and enjoy, I hope you will. But more importantly, I want to say what an honor and a pleasure it is for us to be able to serve as hosts to the collection of the Honorable Mickey Ibarra. Mr. Ibarra's story is an inspiring one. His accomplishments are frankly astonishing. His entire career has had a significant and positive impact and influence on our country as a whole. But for us in the library, I think what we find most inspiring about it is his longstanding dedication to the education of youth, and especially to the youth of Utah. So for that reason alone, obviously we would be thrilled and honored to have his papers here. But there are so many other reasons as well for us to be excited to have the chance to curate this wonderful and rich collection. And we look forward to making this wonderful collection available to the citizens of Utah and the world. This evening marks the culmination of years of work and preparation, and we want to thank all of you for being here to help us celebrate this very special event. In particular, we'd like to extend our thanks to those sponsors who have made this celebration possible, and what I'd like to do now is invite each of them to come up and say a few words. So first, if you'd please welcome Juan Judd, who is the Senior Vice President and Diverse Markets Director for Zions Bank.
And on behalf of Zions Bank, Mickey, it's such an honor. Scott Anderson could not be here today, but he speaks so highly of you. He finds you as a dear friend and somebody who's done so much for the community. And so he wanted to make sure that we were able to speak on his behalf and let you know what a great man you are and how much he really feels that you're dear to his heart. It's a proud honor for me to be speaking here to you. As a Utah Latino, I was telling David, what an honor it is to have somebody of your caliber here with us, to look up to emanate, to really follow on the footsteps of such a great person. And so personally to me, it's a big deal that you're here. And I feel honored just to have this opportunity. I'm a little nervous. I usually don't get nervous, but to be directing some words at you, I appreciate the time. So on behalf of Zions Bank and Scott Anderson, thank you very much for everything, Mickey. We appreciate you.
Next, I'd like to invite Brian Belknap, the Community Bank President for Wells Fargo, to come up and say a few words.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Brian Belknap. I'm the Community Banking President for Wells Fargo Bank here in Salt Lake. And it is a thrill, a privilege, and an honor for me to be here tonight to celebrate this, I'm going to call it a great victory for Mickey Ibarra. And in fact, I'd like to talk about a couple of great victories. And in fact, we marked 160 years, our anniversary, Wells Fargo, and we recently gave more than $2.5 million out in the community, and more than 5 nonprofits in Utah were recipients of some of those funds. And so a great first for some of those as well. For more than 160 years, we've understood the value of diversity. We've embraced diversity. It's a part of our heritage as well. And among those firsts, I am proud to have been pushing and sponsoring for. We were the first financial services company to open the first Latino-focused branch in Utah, the first financial services company to accept the matricular card, the first financial services company to accept the Utah Driving Privilege Card, and the first financial services company to support Utah Pride. And tonight marks another first for me, and that is to be so close to an assistant to the President of the United States. So I'm very thrilled and honored to have that opportunity. We're very proud to be a part of this and sponsor this event tonight for Mickey Ibarra. On behalf of myself and the other 4,000 team members of Wells Fargo in Utah, congratulations.
And now please welcome Olga de la Cruz, incoming chair of the Utah Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, everyone. I wasn't nervous until Juan Carlos said he was nervous, so I guess it's okay. Mickey, thank you so much. This means so much to the University of Utah. It means so much to our community here in Utah. As an alum of the University of Utah, the best university here in Utah, I remember studying right here in this library and wondering, what will I be? What will I become? And your gift is going to make such a difference to so many young people, whether they're Latino or not. It's going to make so much of a difference because one of our own Utah boys made it to the White House. So thank you so much. We appreciate you allowing us to have this gift and to share it with our students and to our community. Thank you so much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Greg Thompson, Associate Dean for Special Collections in the Marriott Library, who's going to share some comments about the Mickey Ibarra papers and will introduce the next part of our program this evening. Greg?
Thank you very much and welcome. We're delighted to have you here tonight at the Marriott Library and be sharing a very special event with us this evening. It has absolutely been a privilege to work with the Honorable Mickey Ibarra over the past 4 years, I believe, Mickey, and what a trip it's been. When Ted Wilson brought Mickey to the library, introduced him to us and said, Ted said, "You need to talk to this gentleman about his papers." Oh, my land, was he ever true. This is a collection that is very special. It is extraordinarily unique, and it is voluminous. You have around you with some images from the collection. You can see a few of the notebooks that are several of many, which help to articulate and present, at least in a visual form, what Mickey's career has been about. And it gives you just a little bit of an insight. I don't know if you were paid much attention to the video. This is a composite video taken over 6 or 7 years, I suspect, Mickey, of your involvement prior to the White House and during the White House. And it's great fun to see, kind of in third dimension, the activities of a senior staff member in the Clinton White House. Well, you've heard a little bit from the others of, kind of about the collection, but let me tell you some of the details of the collection and its contents and why we are so proud to receive it and so excited about the research opportunities in this collection. It is a collection of about 1,400 images. You see a few of those. And it's rare to have a collection of that much visual material to it. One of the challenges, and Mickey's been working with us, is to identify the images. And it's great fun to sit beside Mickey and go through and say, well, this is so-and-so, and Mickey has 5 stories about that so-and-so. The manuscript part of the collection, and you see just a little bit of it in the notebook, it's 27 linear feet. Goes across this room a couple times. And it records the correspondence from Mr. Ibarra's office as senior staff member. It's correspondence and memoranda to the president. It's White House memoranda. It's the personal notebooks that Mickey kept. It's documentation articulating the presidential trips that were made. As you kind of get a sense when you look around some of this, Mickey was a very active speaker. He was on the road a lot, and he talked a lot. And the collection records and represents that exceedingly well. It shows the breadth of the responsibility and the activity of the individual who holds the title of Intergovernmental Relations. Of course, one of the main pieces of the White House experience is his state-by-state articulation of accomplishments, activities, and goals related to that. Also, one of the fun things in the collection is the representation of the 1996 Clinton-Gore political campaign, and the notebooks that go with that help to explain the under foundation of that campaign. And what I think one of the really interesting pieces and very important for potential and future research is that look at how one administration transmits its activities and educates the next administration as they come in to take on their responsibilities. Very interesting insight into a very unique transition in world governments and in certainly the United States. There are 6 books of scrapbooks, 6 boxes, excuse me, of scrapbooks, more personal, more daily. Mickey Ibarra was one of these special people who absolutely knew that documenting was exceedingly important. And even though there is the Clinton Presidential Library and the National Archives on Pennsylvania Avenue out on the University of Maryland campus, Mickey understood that by creating copies, he could preserve and present the activities of his office and of a senior staff member. And indeed, the collection we have does that with such wonderful detail. It is absolutely a unusual, research-rich, and student research opportunity collection that we have, that Mickey Ibarra has given to this university and is now being made available to our students. One other little thing that's buried in that collection that I'll mention, it's an unusual look into the 2002 Salt Lake City Winter Games. Mickey was the liaison from the White House to the organizing committee. I suspect you probably worked with the bid committee at somewhere along on the line there. And you get to see the relationship between, the all-important relationship between the federal government and the Salt Lake bid and organizing committees. For us, that's special. We are the official repository for the 2002 Winter Games. And we have thousands of linear feet of material. And here's another set that looks into that experience for this city. Wonderful experience. Thank you, Mickey, for providing that to us. And thank you for the collection. It's wonderful. We're working now to document the experiences through the use of oral history. Started a series of interviews with Mickey, interviewed his father, Francis, and we'll be interviewing his mother, and kind of extending out. So we hope to round out the story. I call that type of activity putting the meat on the bones. With Mickey Ibarra's collection, the meat's already there. We don't have to do much to put the full body together. Might bring to your attention on the tables back there is a pamphlet about papers and the importance of collecting. In this collection, in this experience, it is about documenting the Latino experience in Utah and the trip of a Utahn to the White House. Very, very important. We struggle to gain documentation that is articulating the experience and the history of the Latinos. We look to you to help us. Mickey Ibarra's papers is a lead cornerstone piece. Please work with us. We would love to continue to document more. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Ted Wilson, former Mayor Ted Wilson, who was mayor of this fair city from 1976 to 1985. He came to the university campus in 1985 and was director of the Hinckley Institute for about, I've forgotten how many years. 18 years. That's what I thought, is that enough? So 18 years. And it was a wonderful time on this campus, working with Ted and the Hinckley Institute, very close working relationship with the Marriott Library. Since that time, Ted has served as special advisor to Governor Herbert on environmental issues and has continued to keep a hand in here at the university. He is, continues to be professor of political science. It's wonderful to have you here, Ted. Please join me in welcoming Ted Wilson. Thank you, Ted.
Well, what a day. You know, Mick, you've come a long way, baby. I'm trying to think when I first met Mick. It was before he went to the White House. He was just one of the guys, you know, and just hung out at the NEA and at in the Utah Education Association. He's an educator by root and by purpose. And he took on troubled kids. Who would think about that back then? And identified what they needed and did so many great things for them. My association with Mickey has been long and rich. As a beggar in his office in Washington, as a friend, as a political colleague. I think we've always supported basically the same people for office. Mostly they have lost. That's not our fault, is it? I have to laugh. Mickey reminded me that as one of the co-chairs for the Clinton campaign in Utah, I brought him in third, behind no less than Ross Perot. Not Mickey. We could have won with Mickey. But he did so much in that office. He was able to see the really delicate things that have to be done. First of all, he understood mayors and governors, and they're the honoriest set of people in the United States of America. And he had the bromidic personality to take all the heat from him, all the bad calls and letters, and Mickey, I need this, that, and the other, and so forth. So he understood how that's done and how you get people together. He came to this university when we were trying to get to Fort Douglas and walked us through that thicket. And think of the resource that Fort Douglas is to this university and what it means. He worked with the mayor of Salt Lake City. It wasn't me, I'd gone on, but it was important to work with the UTA and the mayor of Salt Lake City to get a light rail system. And that's Mickey Ibarra's handwork right there. Had he not convinced the president, had he not worked with, on a nonpartisan basis, with Senator Robert Bennett and others, we wouldn't have had that light rail system, which, by the way, they used the Olympics very skillfully as a leverage point on that. And that was Mickey's idea. So this guy's one cool operator. And I deeply appreciate him, and it's my pleasure to add some weight, I hope a little weight anyway, in fact a lot of weight, but to this ceremony tonight. And now, that being said, for Mickey, I get to introduce one other gentleman here tonight. A guy I met in 1975. I just won the race for mayor. I didn't know where I was. I was sort of like the Robert Redford character, you know, who won in that movie, The Candidate, like he wasn't supposed to win it, and then he won. He said, what do I do now? And I didn't know what to do, and it was December of 1975. I got a call in the evening from the fire chief. I was not even yet the oath taker. And the Congress Hotel is on fire. And so I rushed down there to see what firefighters do and how they operate. And I stood on the street with a young cub guy reporter from Call Radio, Kenny Verdoya. I'd never met Kenny, but we stood there together, and he was like half interviewing me, and I was half finding out what the press was about, and we were kind of standing there by this immense burning building. And it was a ferocious fire. And as we stood there on the street, not 30 feet away from us, not even a width of the road, the entire building collapsed. All I remember was hugging Kenny. The last press person I've ever hugged in my life. I thought I had died and been greeted by relatives on the other side. And so that was Kenny and my introduction to each other. And I've watched him, you know, through his tremendous broadcasting career, coming up here to this great campus station, KUED. huge documentary on Utah history, which is a signature piece that Kenny put together, many other great pieces that Kenny's put together. So I think tonight to bring Ibarra and Kenny Verdoya together is real providence. So I'm going to invite them to come up. Kenny's going to take one of these seats, and Mickey is. Mickey didn't want to give a speech. I thought, have you lost all your political savvy? But he wanted to just be Mickey himself. So Kenny's going to make Mickey Mickey, and Mickey will make Kenny Kenny, and we'll have a lot of fun for the next 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Right here, okay.
One of the great temptations when you interview someone of Mickey Ibarra's contribution and rather legendary background, as you've heard, is to stay at 30,000 feet. Talk about the Doctor of Humane Letters, talk about the White House insider who knew what it was like. And as you walk around and you look at these pictures, Mickey's been there and he's done that. If you had an opportunity to view the video clips, you saw that Mickey Ibarra was able to share a podium with Rocky Anderson and Mitt Romney at the same time. So obviously, if you stay at that 30,000-foot level, that's pretty impressive. But Mickey, it starts in a much different level. It starts as a kid. You and your brother, sons of Francisco, comes to this country in 1945 as part of the Bracero program. Terribly controversial program where citizens from Mexico were recruited by labor contractors to come here and do the heavy work of keeping agricultural productive during the war years. It's not an easy young life for you, and yet we see where you've come. Take me back to those earliest years, those first Utah years that you recall, and being a young man in this city. Your family is coming apart. Tell me about the young Mickey Ibarra.
Well, Ken, that's in many ways a painful memory. Let me just share with everyone in the audience that I'm very pleased to be joined by two folks that had a lot to do with those early years. My father, Francisco Ibarra, who is right here visiting from Sacramento, California. And my little brother, 11 months younger than I, David Ibarra, who I like to refer to as the success in our family. Those early years, though, Ken, it was tough. I mean, I was 2 years old. David was 1 when my mother came to the conclusion that she could not care for us.
Your father was in Germany in the Army.
My father took a leave from Kennecott Copper for 2 years, courtesy of the United States Army. And my mother was just 16 years old when I was born. And of course, everyone understands Utah was a different place in the early 1950s. And my mother relinquished custody of us to the state of Utah. We became wards of the court and were placed in foster care. So we have recollections of several families. My first real strong recollection was a family in Midvale, Utah, Joe and Sally Gomez. Did I get that right, David? Yeah. Joe and Sally Gomez. We lived right by the railroad tracks. I mean, he worked for the railroad. We were in those wooden trailer house type facilities. There was no plumbing. It was a time that I think David and I both really kind of struggled as to who we were. I remember being asked the most hurtful question, and we were asked it so often that we had to figure out how to get over it. And that was, so your name is Ibarra. That's how it was pronounced in the 1950s, Ibarra. So why are you living with the Gomez's? Why are you living with the Smiths? I think it was that question that immediately returned me to the notion or the question as, how did this happen? Or who am I? Where do I belong? It was a very, very, I think, hurtful time. And yet, my responsibility, I think right from the beginning, Ken, I felt a great responsibility to help my brother. We were always kept together through all of that time period, which was most of the next 13 years of our lives. But I was always mindful of my responsibility to try to help David. And David and I was the talker, and some would say I still am. David was not. David was so traumatized, I think, by this experience that he didn't talk. He wouldn't talk. More often than not, I had to do the talking for both of us. He would talk to me, but he wouldn't talk to others. It was just, I think, his defense mechanism. But we figured out that we had to overcome this. We were very fortunate, Ken. We were very fortunate, by and large, to be placed in foster homes that cared about us and were good to us. In particular, our family that we were placed in Provo, Utah, Isla and Cecil Smith, who we stayed with for 8 years. They really became very important, we've referred to them as Mom and Dad Smith. And hardworking people. He was a crane operator at Geneva Steel. She was a housewife. But they cared for us. They taught us some of those basic values. But it was also clear that we were not going to be successful together in Utah. By the time I was 15 years old, it was very clear that David was continuing to struggle in a very serious way. He dealt with his hurt through anger and a whole lot of trouble in schools. I'm convinced to this day that if we had not made that decision together, because our father would not allow us to ever be separated, to reunite with my father at age 15, as I mentioned, in Sacramento, our lives could have turned out very different. I think I probably, in the end, maybe I would have been fine. David would not have been. But that decision, and Dad's decision to do the right thing and to allow us to live with him in Sacramento, it really set us on a much better path. It really connected us to the Latino community in a different way. Back in the 50s, there weren't many Latinos, and those few that were here weren't treated very well. I mean, Kennecott Copper was about it, maybe some of the military, that was it, and a whole lot of braceros and field laborers. But in California, it was a different way of life. I mean, Sacramento, Camino Real, I mean, the names, everything was different. A lot of Latinos, you started figuring out, who we were. We met our relatives many times for the first times. We had cousins there. So at any rate, that was a very, very important turning point, I think, in our lives. Sacramento, for us, was a very good experience. We became leaders in our school, very large high school. But I think, again, while much of my experience could be labeled disadvantaged as a youngster, in many respects, and somewhat ironically, Ken, I think it turned out to be an advantage.
How so?
It taught me, I had to learn at a very early age how to survive. I had to learn at a very early age that I was on my own. I had to learn at a very early age how to figure out how we would overcome the obstacles that had been placed in front of us through no fault of our own. But they were obstacles that we had to overcome. We had to figure that out. And I think those challenges, in fact, made us stronger. I also believe that we benefited, again, ironically, from the necessity to learn how to move from one situation to another. Transition, that's something that we had to learn from a very early age. And again, we were very fortunate to be with some good people that really helped two young boys find their way.
One of my favorite Bible passages says, each day informs the next.
Yeah.
Do you see in those early years your life being informed in a way that shapes who you are, that leads to that ultimate success as a mature adult, that leads you to the Oval Office.
Yes, yes. I think the core values, which my brother and I have embraced over our lifetime, are very clear. And those values, I think, were first instilled upon us in our experience in Utah. By foster parents, to be sure, but by other good people in Utah, teachers, church leaders, folks that helped us. And I think understand the value of a good education. It's impossible, Ken, to overstate the importance of a good education as a key to success. David and I fortunately did receive a good education. That was, again, impossible to overstate its importance. But there are other values, the values of honesty, the values of dependability, responsibility, the value of good old-fashioned hard work, the value of surrounding yourself with good people. You are who you hang around with. All of that, I think, were values that helped us when we left Utah. It helped me certainly as I went through college, as I embraced my first professional responsibility, and through the rest of my career.
Goodness knows I could spend, in fact, Greg would probably have to install us as our own exhibit where I could talk with you for days about this. Class president of your high school, a very large high school.
Yes.
Well-recognized high school football player, gets a lot of accolades. In fact, most estimates are you played about 50 pounds bigger than you actually were back then at that time. You go in the military, you serve your country for 3 years, you go to Germany where your father actually served.
Yes.
And then you return and you use the GI Bill of Rights.
Exactly.
Rather than go straight to work, rather than look for employment, you say, this is the decision I'm making.
Yes.
Why? How were those roots set in you for higher education?
Well, I'll tell you, I came to Brigham Young University in my freshman year. Again, Island Cecil Smith came back into my life. They offered me free board and room. They couldn't help with any tuition. These were not people with a lot of financial means. But they could offer me a room, and I grabbed it. With the help of a grant and aid and several scholarships, I was able to do it. But I quickly ran out of money my first year. My parents were unable to provide any assistance, any assistance. I'm not sure where it is written anymore where kids believe that their parents owe them a college education. But I'll tell you, the situation that I found, there was no help there. And so I had to figure out how to overcome obstacles. For me, the ticket to completing my college education was going to be the United States Army. I went in the Army at a time, Vietnam War, when most everybody was trying to figure out how to get a deferment. I was fortunate that year, my draft number was so high, it's very unlikely I would have been drafted. But I enlisted, and that's why I went for 3 years. I got an opportunity to get some training there, but it was all about really serving my country. Yeah, I was corny enough back then to still realize that my country, the United States, had really provided already a whole lot of opportunities that my dad never enjoyed, or many folks around the world don't enjoy. And so I did feel an obligation to help our country at a time of need. And at the same time, I knew that our country was going to reward me for that, and with a benefit, an education benefit. When people tell me the government can't ever get it right, baloney. They got it right with the GI Bill, and it certainly helped me finish college. So that was my plan. That was my financial plan to get it done. That allowed me to return to BYU. I thought about maybe BYU wasn't the right place for me, but I started at BYU and I was going to finish at BYU, and I did.
I'm intrigued by the choice of a career. Young men coming out of a military experience may say, boy, I'm going to grab the brass ring, I'm going to go for a degree in engineering, or I'm going to go for a degree in business, I'm going to get my money, and you go in a direction where you say, the classroom is calling me.
Yes.
What was that voice that said, this is your direction?
Many good people with the very kind of difficult family circumstances that I was raised in. Teachers became a very important part of my mentoring, leadership, examples, heroes even. Teachers filled that role. Many good teachers that I experienced, in particular, Mr. Steinberg, who was my government teacher my junior year at Luther Burbank High School in Sacramento. He is the one that first sparked that interest about public service, about political engagement, about our democracy, about our responsibility to engage and participate. And so I felt the way that I could best contribute, pay back, if you will, would be to become a teacher. I was a political science major. I got my degree in that. Never intended to go to law school. I wanted to teach. I was very clear about that. So that's how I started my professional career. And I also wanted to teach at-risk students. I felt that I might, because of my life experience, be able to help them, be able to instill some confidence in them, that they too could succeed.
The other day, I watched you masterfully interact with a seminar room full of young college students at the Hinckley Institute.
Yes.
And the one thing you told them about your experience as a teacher was, I realized it was not enough. It's not enough if you're committed to education just to be good in the classroom.
Yes.
It's not enough just to make the difference in the life of a student. You've got to think bigger.
Yes.
Help this group understand what you were sharing with those young minds.
Well, this was the notion. My teaching career was complemented by my engagement with my teacher union as well, the Utah Education Association. This was back in the late 70s when the teacher associations were just starting to realize the intersection between policy and politics, realizing that their responsibility really required them to engage in campaigns and elections, to ensure that candidates for public office who decided nearly everything that impacted the classroom, the class size, the teacher salary, school budgets, all of that, it was a requirement that we as educators, the experts in education, had to engage to ensure that we shaped an environment where better decisions would be made to provide a quality education for every student in Utah and America. That's something that I believed in. It became then my responsibility to help other educators do that. I mean, I got the break of a lifetime, Ken, when in 1984, the National Education Association hired me as a political education specialist to come to Washington, D.C., the national headquarters, to help develop the curriculum and train the trainers that would fan out across the country to help teachers understand the need to get involved in our democracy.
And as the NEA becomes more effective, because they have bright operatives out there telling teachers about the rules of engagement for
Yes.
making a difference in the political process, there's this pushback against the teacher union. You heard it all the time. The NEA, the UEA,
Yes.
that teachers union, they're too political. Stay in the classroom. Keep your mouth shut.
Yes.
Stay out of this. You know, and every time you try to raise that voice, there was this pushback from certain political forces saying, teachers shouldn't be doing that. How did you respond to that mindset? Because I certainly heard a lot of that in Utah.
Yes, I'm sure you did, and I certainly heard a lot of it in my position, and many of my colleagues as well. It was a great reminder, I think, a reminder of another belief of mine, and that is power isn't given away, it's taken. And it's very important, I think, for educators to understand the necessity to get involved, to really get involved, to really check in. What we discovered is that if we don't check in, we're really leaving it to others to make that decision. And we felt that the decision about education really needed to include teachers. So we were ready to take the heat. We were ready to take the heat, take the criticism, but to stay focused on getting our educators engaged in politics. And it was really that experience that really then led me to the 1992 opportunity where I became political manager for the National Education Association and was the point person heading our efforts on behalf of a little-known governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, to really do all that we could as an organization to elect him to the highest office of the land.
You tell a marvelous story about that, how one political candidate finally in your career comes to you, says, look, I'm not here for today. I'm not here for an endorsement. I'm in for the whole deal. I'm with you every day. And you said that really just was like a light going off in your life.
Yes, I remember it very clearly. The endorsement process of the National Education Association required every presidential candidate seeking the endorsement of the NEA to submit to a taped interview as related to their campaign, their issues, their priorities, their viewpoints. Bill Clinton, like the other candidates, was interviewed, and I recall very clearly his promise, his commitment that if you elect me president, I will be the education president every day, not just election day. And that was a theme that we picked up on and clearly put him on top. And of course, as it turns out, I think both those that perhaps didn't agree with President Clinton, I think would have to clearly recognize that it was Bill Clinton that really elevated the issue of education to the presidential level for the first time in my recollection in American history. So this was a very important endorsement by a very important organization for, I think, the most important issue, and that was the issue of education.
And you're designated by the NEA to be that critical liaison with the White
Yes.
House. This first White House saying, yes, the subject does matter beyond
Yes.
just an
Yes.
election season. As you move through that first term and you're growing closer to the reelection bid, you face a decision. How engaged will I be in this next political process? Tell me about facing that decision.
Well, I tell you, it was a tough decision in that I was asked to join the president's campaign, his campaign for re-election in 1996. I didn't want to leave the NEA. I felt that I was making a great contribution at the NEA to the president's efforts. Being political manager was something that I didn't think anything could ever be better than that. Politics is what I love, it's what I enjoy. It was my responsibility every day to do it for something that I believed in so passionately, education. So I was very reluctant to let go of all of that. But in the end, I did make the decision to join the campaign. I was the most senior Latino on the campaign staff of 1996 at the Washington headquarters. And it was that experience, clearly, Ken, that also really brought me closer to the president and the president's advisors and his campaign staff as we worked to re-elect a Democratic president for the first time since Franklin Roosevelt. That election turned out quite well for us, and it gave us the opportunity to continue at the White House. And it was then, of course, after his re-election, where then I was offered the opportunity to join him there as an assistant to the president.
I want to talk about the White House years in a minute, but you made another comment to a young student's question the other day that really intrigued me. They were asking about, it's difficult to be engaged right now. The political process turns me off. The government process turns me off. And you said, when good people like you
Check
quit,
out.
check out, then that just leaves this gaping hole for the extremists to come rushing
They
in.
check in. That's exactly right. When the good people check out, the extremists check in. And I mean on both sides of the political spectrum. One of the great concerns, and I think one of the obstacles to us right-siding ourselves in America, is getting folks involved in their democracy, in government, in our campaigns and elections. They can make a difference, and it's, I think, very important for us. It's understandable, the frustration. I mean, we have so many folks that I think are just really wiping their hands of this, you know, to either party, all candidates. They really don't care about me. But I think it's important for us to overcome all of that cynicism, that pessimism, and get engaged. I think this is the greatest democracy in the history of mankind, and it's important for us to engage in order to save it.
And yet, to be the director of intergovernmental affairs, you know you're accepting a position where basically each day they put you on the rack and measure you up for the lashes. Because every cranky mayor across the great United States, every state legislator, every governor has you on speed dial. Mm-hmm. How did you keep your wits over that 4-year period of Mickey, I need, Mickey, or the president owes me? I'm sure you heard it all from the cooing, loving words of the person who was there in 96 to to the person who says, you'll never get elected in this nation. Tell me how you handled that. What do you bring to that job?
You're correct, Ken. I heard it all. And Ted's quite right, too. The unlimited demand chasing limited resources in every single way. But this recalls a couple of points I want to share real quickly. I arrived at the White House for my very first day, June 6th of 1997. Before I could even get through the security gate, waiting there for me was none other than Mayor Didi Corradini. Didi Corradini was my first appointment. Well, let me say it this way. She was my first meeting at the White House. She had no appointment. And Didi and I became fast friends. And I'll tell you this, Salt Lake City, in my view, was well served by Mayor Corradini. She was a tenacious advocate that absolutely would not take no for an answer. To your point, I'm also, it raises a memory. President Clinton once introduced me to a host of folks at an event. Mickey Ibarra, my assistant for intergovernmental affairs, who's responsible for dealing with nearly half the headaches in America. The truth is this, I had a little card, a little index card that I wrote on the big, bold print. It's important to be nice. It's nice to be important, and it's important to be nice. That was very helpful to me. A second thing that I really came to understand, reasonable people can come to different conclusions on nearly every issue in America and remain friends. We had an Office of Intergovernmental Affairs that I believed first and foremost needed to organize themselves to deal with this. Working at the White House for me was like trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant nearly every day. We had to get ourselves organized and focused on a mission. Our mission was twofold: to build support for the President's policy initiatives, and secondly, to respond to the concerns of our partners in government. And that was also an attitude that we needed to demonstrate every single day. We only have one president at a time in America, and our responsibility was to deal with our elected officials as partners in government. Whether they were Democrat or Republican, they had a standing in our office. We also, beyond focusing on those two key responsibilities every day, and I didn't remind my team every week, I reminded them every single day as we started our team meeting in my office at 9 a.m. It was never a situation where we were 50-50, spending our time doing equally both. No, I wasn't going to expect that. But if we weren't doing both every single day, we weren't serving the president well. Secondly, we had to get organized. We organized an Office of 9 into very specific responsibilities. When a mayor had a problem, she knew who my lead was for mayors, governors, and all the rest. And I oversaw them all. So getting organized was really important. But the third thing I would say, Ken, that we were very successful at, and that was extending our team. 9 political appointees at the White House dealing with thousands of elected officials. There's no way in the world that could work. So what we did is engage the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs in nearly every department and agency throughout the federal government. Every other Monday at exactly 4 o'clock, I would convene a meeting at the White House with all of the directors of intergovernmental affairs throughout the federal government. And guess what our agenda was? Building support for the president's policy initiatives. What are we doing on this issue, this issue, this issue? To engage our elected officials, to help them understand what we're trying to accomplish and how they can be helpful, and also to listen to what the legislation needs to look like so in fact they can execute public policy well at the local level and state level. And second piece on that agenda was responding to the concerns of our partners in government. Okay, what are the needs out there? What does the White House need to be doing? What do we need to be informing the president about? That's how it was we managed. I attempted to make sure that every single phone call was returned within 24 hours. That was very important.
That is remarkable. I can tell you that if you were able, even just to pursue that goal of returning a call within 24 hours is pretty remarkable, because over the years I've heard many people say, oh my gosh, I never heard from them unless they wanted something from me.
Well, responding to their letters as well. We worked very hard at that. We wanted to be responsive. That's very important. And that's part of the collection. You will see every single letter that ever crossed my desk and I signed is in this White House collections. So it's a lot about my interaction with elected officials in response to their requests for assistance. But that being responsive is important. It's being respectful. Many times we could not help. Many times I was not the deliverer of good news. But the fact that I delivered an answer was important. The fact that I listened to the need and did my best to engage the appropriate department and agency officials to be responsive, I think that got us a lot of goodwill.
I have a responsibility to engage you, and I've kind of turned my back on you, trying to pretend that you weren't there, because I didn't want to give up the opportunity to talk with Mickey, but I am really, really interested also in engaging you if there's any questions from the audience. But there's one more observation that you made the other day as I watched you at the Hinckley Institute. You said, I take no comfort when I see a president, regardless of their party. You were speaking specifically of George W. Bush.
Yes.
I take no comfort nor delight from watching a president suffer public scrutiny or public disfavor.
Yes.
And tell this group why you said you take no comfort from that.
Well, it takes me back to the last day at the White House. I told you the day I arrived. I left the White House at exactly noon on January 20th of 2001. And left with really a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of some relief, to be sure, and yes, some disappointment. Our Vice President, Al Gore,
Who you had worked with.
yes, very closely. In fact, where's the picture? This is a picture taking of Al Gore with me in the ceremonial office of the Vice President in the old Executive Office building on my first day at the White House. And I commented to the Vice President, I bet you're surprised to see me here. And Mayor Cordini was a part of that meeting too. This was a meeting, she was working
She
it.
didn't
Oh,
leave
my
you
God.
alone.
She was, this was a part of what we called the Big Seven. These were the heads of the intergovernmental organizations, the head of the National Governors Association, president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, president of the National Caucus or Conference of State Legislators. They were all meeting with the vice president. But what I meant by that was, of course, I was on the sidelines immediately, watching President Bush engage as our new president. And the experience of being in the White House, and I think the challenge that every president has in the White House, regardless of party, is something I learned to respect very much. My belief is that we want our president to be successful. And for me, I want every president to be successful. When a president is successful, enjoys the confidence of the American people, our nation is on the right path. And because our nation enjoys such a unique position in the world democracy, it's important for our nation to be in a good place because it impacts the world as well. It gave me no solace, it gave me no pleasure to see President Bush struggle the way that he did. And again, I think that comes directly, Ken, from my own experience in the White House. It's not an easy job.
Let me turn to you. I even have a microphone. Who has a question for Mickey Ibarra?
I want to grab this
and
water.
let me grab this, Greg. I'll do the running for you. You stay right there.
Okay.
Have a drink of water. Tim Chambliss of the Political Science Department. Good to see you, my friend. Your question.
Mickey, it's great to see you. You worked 80-hour weeks for 4 years. And when you left on January 20th of 2001, you could have gone, you had many options. You had made many professional contacts. You could have gone back in education. Could you speak to the choice that you made in 2001 to pursue a new path in your life?
Yeah. But first, take a look at all these pictures. being away from the White House turns you younger immediately. And let me say also that Norma Vega, my fiance from Los Angeles, is here with us too, and she's helped out a lot too. But Tim, I really give great credit to my brother David for my decision to do something I had never imagined possible in my career. It was never on my to-do list following college. Never thought that was possible. I spent the first 20 years of my professional career engaged in nonprofit endeavors, as a teacher, as a union organizer, as a White House staff member. My brother helped convince me that I'd probably proven that I could attain some level of success in the nonprofit arena. Now it was time for me to seek success in the for-profit business. And the way you do that is through small business in many, many cases. So I opened my own business, which is now the Ibarra Strategy Group, at 11 years old, as an experiment. I do it for a year. Would I be able to attract a handful of clients, serving as their advocate, serving as their advisor? And would that prove to be more rewarding professionally and personally for the first time in my life than a single employer or not? I was scared to death. But the fear of failure has been a major motivator throughout my entire life and every experience that I've had. You know, failure is not an option. And so my brother's help, my desire to overcome that fear of failure and to open my own business, after a year it was real clear to me if I'd leave the comfort of my condo in Bethesda, go downtown, open an office, surround myself with a staff, it'd work even better. That's exactly what we did. It was also an obstacle in not only the fear of failure, but the other obstacle I had to overcome, frankly, in the transition from nonprofit to for-profit endeavor was the pursuit of wealth is a worthy endeavor. Can you imagine that? I don't know if it's peculiar just to the Latino community, but I think there's something there, that the pursuit of wealth is thought of as something unholy or something not worthy. Well, I'm here to tell you that I am converted. The pursuit of wealth is indeed a worthy endeavor, provided that you, like my brother has also demonstrated by example, it is possible to do good and to do well at the same time. And I would suggest to you that by doing well, you have an opportunity to do more good than you would otherwise. And so whether it's through the Ibarra Foundation, through the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, which I serve on their executive committee, or other capacities that we make a contribution. Again, I think that was a terrific decision that was made. I'm glad I made it. I've had a wonderful experience, and I'm going to ride that horse as long as I can.
Let me also, yes, please. Let me also say that when Mickey engages with clients, he services them in a very special way. And one of his clients is, in fact, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the public broadcasting system, PBS, who has made my life much more pleasant by giving me professional purpose. And I received a communication from the president of PBS, Paula Kerger, congratulating me on having the opportunity to spend some time with Mickey and telling me what was completely the obvious, that here is a remarkable man who serves well and counsels wisely and is a great friend of public television. So you take that gratitude with you as well. Another question. Ted, you're the only living elected official who could ever get away with still calling me Kenny after all these years.
I love you, man. You made me feel better that night. I thought only you and I had survived, and we were on the way to start a new world. Mickey, there's so much restructuring going on in the federal-state relationship these days. Our legislature just passed a bill trying to get the federal government to recognize a promise that they say they made to give federal land back to Utah. There is a huge budgetary shift going on as the federal government tries to right its fiscal ship. It means it'll all go down to the states, of course. I'd just like your wisdom on that.
It's been very disappointing to me, and I'm short of the 42nd President of the United States, who left office with a balanced budget and a surplus and began reducing our national debt. A Democrat. That somehow so quickly we've lost our way. That in fact we've lost our way in the sense of keeping our financial house in order. Now, to be sure, that's the result of lots of variables, including 2 wars that, as far as I can figure out, nobody planned on. But yet, I mean, wars that weren't just, I mean, they're still going on. 10 years. My gosh. So, again, Ted, I think it's very important that we get back to the basics. It is important that we balance our budgets. It's important that we also do as President Clinton did when he was elected. I am going to focus like a laser beam on restoring the American economy. And I think that is the challenge of the next president. For me, I don't mind telling you, yes, I'm an Obama supporter, and I hope that's the way it turns out. But regardless of who the president is, I think that has to be the focus. When America goes back to work, it's going to make a huge difference in our budget. When America returns our soldiers from overseas, who in my estimation have been fighting far too long, then in fact I think we have an opportunity then to begin right-sizing our budget once again. When we continue to invest as President Clinton did, the investment in education isn't for only altruistic reasons. It's for economic reasons as well. And that is a highly educated American public is in fact in a position to provide a much healthier economic condition also. So the president Norm and I had the privilege of returning to Little Rock in August to mark the 20th anniversary of Bill Clinton's announcement for President of the United States, and to spend some time at the Bill Clinton Library and to hear him speak, Ken, and I'll tell you, I was a little embarrassed, a little sheepish, for ever doubting the ability of the United States of America and its people and its leaders to step forward to get us out of the ditch. And I think we can. But we've got to, as an American public, demand it of our elected officials. Some folks believe we get the government we deserve. And in some respects, I think that's true. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we need to bring other converts on board.
I have badly abused the time constraints placed upon me, so I apologize for that. Suffice it to say that I would consider myself in a blissful spot if I could spend hours engaged with Mickey Ibarra discussing not only what he's contributed in his career and the walk that he's walked, because this is a man who walks, this is a man who doesn't talk, and that's one of the things that I love about you, Mickey. But more importantly, to recognize that this man is an extraordinary success story. This man reminds us of what is possible in this society in which we live, with odds stacked deep against him and his brother and his father and his mother. He's found a pathway through education, through engagement, through the simple, what Hubert Humphrey used to consider the power positive of what people can do, that I can be a force for good. So to share this hour with Mickey Ibarra, with you, and to recognize this force for good has been a special moment in my career. And Mickey, for the University of Utah and all of us that wear red, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. Really nice job, Gore. Nice job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Utah and the J. Willard Marriott Library. I want to thank Ken and Mickey for an exceptionally enjoyable and enlightening program this evening. And of course, we want to thank again Mickey Ibarra for the wonderful collection that he is donating to this library, and for the marvelous association that we have enjoyed with him and with the Ibarra family over these past few years, and that I'm confident will continue to grow into the future. I thank all of you for coming. I think there are still some refreshments. Please enjoy and enjoy yourselves for a little while longer. And thanks again for your attendance this evening.